Hey there good people, it's the Crippled Critic, and this week I'm going to try another off-topic video. Technically, it's still going to be about disabled gamers, but instead of accessibility in gaming, I want to try and take a look at the idea of empowering disabled gamers, or I guess what I mean is allowing a disabled person to play as a powerful disabled video game character. Now, I'm sure there will be many people who disagree with me. How could you play as a disabled character without feeling weak or completely limited? I think even some disabled people would take issue because many of us play video games to escape from reality and don't really want to be reminded of our weaknesses. But hear me out. I'm not just talking about diversity and representation. I think there are ways to make playing a disabled character a fun and engaging experience. And I'm going to show that by taking a look at how Wolfenstein II, the new Colossus, handles disability.
Who is that? Is that me? The old and the weak are doomed.
What really motivated me to talk about this topic was playing Wolfenstein II for the first time. I talked about it briefly in my review for the game, but for those who haven't seen that video, I'll tell you how that particular scene really kicked things off for me. Early on in Wolfenstein II, the main character, BJ Blazkowicz, is severely injured from a bomb blast and is confined to a wheelchair. You are still in complete control of the main character. In fact, BJ has to fight guns blazing and even maneuvers an entire level in a wheelchair. There are some great moments where you get to take down Nazis from a sitting position, and other really tense scenes where you fall out of your wheelchair and have to drag yourself away from danger. No, you can't play the whole game like this, I'm afraid, and pretty quickly after the level ends you get a power suit that conveniently lets you walk upright. But still playing in the wheelchair actually lasts a few hours in this state, and that's kind of awesome. Also, BJ isn't completely healed from his injuries, and it's clear he's running on borrowed time. What was amazing to me was actually feeling powerful playing as someone like me in a wheelchair. You rarely see disabled characters be playable at all. Maybe in small doses it's been done, but not while keeping your character as strong as how the hero of a game is supposed to be. In my experience, I tend to see disabled characters in games written in two ways: strong and capable warriors, or weak and sympathetic side characters. Technically, there are quite a few disabled video game characters with invisible disabilities. Mental illnesses from wartime, like PTSD, people with cybernetic implants, or amputees. These type of characters tend to be extremely independent. They play almost identically to able-bodied characters, and their disability is never a weakness. In fact, it usually gives them an advantage. Some examples of the strong, capable type are Barrett Wallace from Final Fantasy VII, who after a battle losing his arm, he replaced it with a gun arm that can change into multiple weapons. Adam Jensen from the Deus Ex series is another example. After a terrorist attack, he had both arms and legs replaced with augmented hardware, but they gave him sweet perks. His arms turned into blades, and he was given strength far beyond what most men have.
I never asked for this.
Then on the opposite end of things, you have the physically weaker, more sympathetic disabled characters. They are usually one note, purely defined by their disability, or just written disabled to evoke some sort of emotional reaction. For example, you have Ray from Beyond Eyes. She was intentionally written blind, so the player can understand the challenges a blind person may have. You are given the ability to explore and find alternate ways to adapt with Ray, but ultimately, Ray's blindness is her only character trait. Then there's Chloe Price from Life is Strange. The game deals with time travel, so in one alternate timeline, Chloe was in a car crash that resulted in her being paralyzed from the neck down and making her require the use of an electric wheelchair. I give them props for taking the time in the game to show what a realistic life in a wheelchair is like, what with modified ramps and assistive computer technology. But in the end, Chloe can't take the pressures of this life and eventually just wants you to euthanize her.
Listen, Max. My respiratory system is failing, and and it's only getting worse. I want this time with you to be my last memory. Do you understand?
Thus making it clear that her disability is only really meant to make you feel bad for her and make you feel guilty for the decisions you have to make. Both types of disabled characters are fine, though I do think it's interesting that the weaker, sympathetic types aren't usually playable. I think developers have trouble making a disabled character playable in general because they don't want you to feel limited, which I'm sure is difficult, and I'm no expert in creating characters. But in the case of Wolfenstein II, the developers went with a more balanced approach to the main character's disability. BJ Blazkowicz was already an established character from the last game in the series, so the developers of Machine Games had interesting challenges to deal with when deciding to put BJ in a wheelchair. Creative director and writer Jens Mathias spoke about this in an interview, saying, "That was a crazy amount of work. It's a good way to present the journey of growing stronger as a character and all that, but making it still fun and making you not feel limited. The thing, I think, with BJ in a wheelchair is that he is broken, but he's not weak. He still performs melee takedowns, kills people with a submachine gun, or two. How to make you exert that sort of power in that state was tricky. It took us a long time to get right. But boy, did it pay off. You do feel powerful. In fact, you feel almost unstoppable, in part because the disability doesn't really hinder you. It just makes you change how you would normally play. Compare this scene to the beginning of Metal Gear Solid 5, where the main character Snake is waking up from an 8-year coma. Terrorists have broken into the hospital and are out to kill him. Now in the game, they made Snake's muscles realistically atrophied, so he can barely walk or defend himself. But that's the thing, all he can really do is stumble around or hide. He also has a more capable, able-bodied NPC to guide him until he regains his strength.
On your feet, soldier. The whole place is coming down.
Let's take the stairs.
I think this scene was done as a way to ramp up the tension and make you feel powerless, and I think they succeeded, but I don't really remember any players saying that this scene was fun to play. Getting back to Wolfenstein II, BJ is a Nazi-killing badass before and after he's disabled. Wolfenstein is an over-the-top game series, so this kind of scenario feels possible because of it. Funny enough, one of my favorite things about this wild level is how your wheelchair maneuvers the environment. You steer around the deck, but turning in the wheelchair is slightly slower than normal. Just like in real life, you can't go upstairs in a wheelchair, you can only go down them. Some places aren't feasible to get to without hunting for a hydraulic lift to get you higher. It becomes more of an environmental puzzle navigating the level. And this is all done while you have to defend yourself from enemies. Lead designer Jacob Eriksson spoke about creating a somewhat realistic experience steering the wheelchair. We considered consulting a disabled person about how to control the wheelchair, but as the segment is such a short part of the game, we ended up using videos for reference instead. I had watched some videos of people using their wheelchairs in skate parks and got really impressed with what is possible to do with one. But the idea of not letting yourself be limited, even in a situation where you're bound to a wheelchair, is the core of that design, which we call wheelchair combat. The way that BJ uses the wheelchair to deal with the world around him helps us understand what he's going through, even just briefly. Imagine if this whole scene was only shown to us in cutscene format. It might still be cool to look at, but by letting us actually play it, we get a better grasp of who the character is and we experience their struggle. I want to bring up another disabled character who had the closest thing to a similar gameplay experience as in Wolfenstein II. He is the much-loved character Joker, or Jeff Moreau from the Mass Effect series. Joker was born with brittle bone disease, which has given him multiple fractures over the years, so he can barely walk. But what Joker lacks in mobility, he makes up for in his piloting ability and his sense of humor.
Give me the ship.
What? You're crazy! You start singing Daisy Bell and I'm done.
He's an incredibly likable disabled character that a lot of players remember fondly, in no small part because of his voice actor Seth Green, but also I think because he has such a good attitude despite his disability. However, for me, what really made me like Joker, and what made me think of him as more than just that funny guy who flies in Normandy, was a scene in the second Mass Effect game. Funny enough, Joker is one of the few playable characters in the game other than the main character, Shepard. In this scene, hostile aliens have overtaken the ship, and Joker is forced to flee the comfort of the cockpit. He doesn't have an NPC protecting him along the way. In fact, the joke of the scene is that anyone that comes into contact with him who could help him dies immediately, leaving him to fend for himself.
Stay close. I'll protect you. Shit.
Altogether, the entire mission with Joker only lasts a few minutes, but it gives us a brief look at how Joker has to live. Even in danger, he can't run very fast, and he has to time his movements very carefully so he doesn't accidentally break any of his bones. This is shown to us through his unique character animation while walking. For me, even though it was subtle, actually being able to play as Joker helped me understand that even though he's extremely intelligent, he also has his weaknesses, and that can be cool too.
Well, what can I do against collectors? Break my arm at them?
Lastly, I want to take a look at how the developers for Wolfenstein II went the extra mile with the experience by showing how other characters felt about BJ's disability, and also show how someone with a disability might be treated in this world. So through his experience in a wheelchair, BJ ultimately learns that as long as he never gives up, nothing makes him weak, including physical impairments. Now, BJ initially had that typical, "no one will ever love me now" belief, but that was quickly dismissed by his friends and family, who reassured him of his continuous usefulness to the cause. What's more interesting to me is how enemies reacted to his disability, in particular the Nazi soldiers.
You going to run us over with your little wheelchair?
In real life, it's often forgotten that, along with other minorities, Nazis also had disdain for the mentally and physically disabled, saying they were unfit for society as their lives were a burden on able-bodied citizens. During World War II, thousands of disabled individuals were tortured and killed under the Nazi regime. In Wolfenstein II, enemies are quick to call attention to BJ's assumed weakness, just as many disabled people are often underestimated in reality. This is shown best by the way the creepy main antagonist, General Frau Engel, speaks to you.
You think you're a hero, William Joseph Lascaux? Let me tell you, you're not. Only the degenerate rats of the slum admire you. The filthy dregs, festering in the ghetto. But once they see you, this will change. Look, everybody! Is this how a hero looks like? A crippled wretch of a man being in a tomb! Everyone will see what a useless joke you are.
It's in these moments that skyrocket the experience for me. It's one thing for them to give you a cool power fantasy, but it's another thing to really bring it back and show you how the world thinks of you. Characters telling you that you're weak and then proving them wrong. I felt empowered, not only by the crazy weapons, but by allowing me to kick some serious butt as an actual disabled character within the game. It's an incredible feeling taking down the Third Reich in a wheelchair, and I hope the developers understand what they did for disabled gamers. Now, do I think every game should let you play as a disabled character? No, of course not. That wouldn't make sense. But I think Wolfenstein 2 should be a good example for other developers, so they can see that if you decide to make a disabled character in your game, it's more than possible to let gamers play as one of them, maybe even throughout the entire game. It can still be fun, and it doesn't have to make the experience feel limited simply because the character is disabled. What's great is, it looks like more developers are getting creative when putting disabled characters in their games. Ninja Theory did a great job letting you play as someone with a mental disability in the game Hellblade: Senua's Sacrifice. Overkill's upcoming Walking Dead game had a crazy VR demo that had you blasting zombies with a shotgun, all while you were being pushed in a wheelchair. Different for sure. Although their latest trailer looks like they may have dropped that idea. But then there's Perception, a game I still haven't had a chance to play yet. You play as a blind woman who uses echolocation to explore a haunted mansion. Sounds pretty cool to me. So the future has lots of possibilities. Anyway guys, thank you so much for watching. This one took a long time to get out, but I felt like it was a topic that not many people are talking about, and it was kind of important to me. But what do you guys think? Do you like the idea of playing a character that's disabled? Can you think of other cool disabled characters I didn't mention? Let me know in the comment section below. Last but not least, I made a Patreon. Yeah, my last few videos have had a pretty big surge in views, at least for me and the kind of content I make. And that's awesome. Thank you guys so much. It really surprised me. So I made this account. For those who want to support me, you can contribute or not contribute. I totally understand because that's your hard-earned money. But I appreciate anything you can give because every little bit counts. I'm trying to make sure that the rewards I give are what people would want. Exclusive content and maybe even the game review of your choice. But yeah, I'll put a link to that. It's there if you guys want to check it out. Thank you guys so much for all your support. Thanks for watching this video, and I will see you later.